Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're doing my episode 1 review of Hard Knocks Los Angeles training camp with the Chargers and Rams. And as a born and raised Los Angeles native, I couldn't be more excited about the two teams that were selected for this season. I mean, yes, this offseason has been insane. The idea of potentially not having a 2020 season has definitely gone through my brain. But the fact that Hard Knocks is finally back, it's bringing in extra oomph of energy that is finally, injected into my veins. And I'm so excited about the 2020 potential season after all that we saw throughout this episode, giving us an inside look in terms of what organizations, coaches, and players are doing to make sure that they're safe from this virus. It's absolutely incredible. We're going to be able to talk about this episode review, talk about the two teams, and then do a little bit more of an extensive breakdown on the two teams, how my opinions in terms of how they're going to approach the 2020 season with the new acquisitions they've made. We'll talk about all of that. But again, Justin Herbert is on screen. I think he was probably the biggest highlight of today's episode. But without further ado, let's talk about today. Starting off, Hard Knocks immediately began with Zoom calls, and that's something that everyone's had to deal with due to the way that the world's been functioning for the last couple months now. But it's something that we're comfortable with, and organizations, they've gotten players comfortable with communicating online and being able to learn proactively as much as they possibly can, because again, winning an NFL championship takes a lot of effort. So you got to start from day one on those Zoom calls, being able to acclimate new players, rookies, or new guys that are getting into a different system, and get them prepared for this upcoming season. Because again, they're not going to be able to get in pads until 21 days after the beginning of training camp. And even throughout this entire episode, they were doing walkthroughs, regular jerseys and shorts, and there's not going to be pads for quite some time. And that really does change the entire look of Hard Knocks. Sure, Hard Knocks on a yearly basis has always been, we want that gritty, pad heavy episode where everyone's fighting each other and there's so much excitement and energy. That's what we always look forward to. But this year it's going to be a little bit different. It started off with Zoom calls. Then it went ahead and showed us how organizations, teams, coaches, players are proactively trying to fight and keep themselves healthy going into the 2020 season to make sure that we're going to have a 2020 season, whether it's daily testing, whether it's making sure that nobody else is allowed into the organization's facility. I mean, there's no media, so we haven't seen a lot of this, but finally getting an eye on what these teams are doing to make sure that they can keep their players healthy, whether it's having meeting rooms outside, social distancing as much as possible, mandatorily having masks on the field, even through walkthroughs. These are things that is going to make the extra difference and help us get to having a 2020 season and crowning a Super Bowl champion in 2021. And I'm really excited about what we saw today in terms of being able to prepare and go ahead. Now, Coach Anthony Lynn, head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, he made a great point. The team that stays perhaps the most healthiest throughout this entire season will be winning the Super Bowl at the end. And that's the truth of the matter. I mean, sure, there's probably someone that's eventually going to get sick with this disease, this virus, but eventually, you're going to have to fight through it. You're going to lose players, you're going to lose coaches, and sure, those players and coaches could be the difference between you and winning and losing games. And that's just the reality of the situation going into the 2020 season. And on top of it, besides losing players or coaches, you have to play against the team on the other side of the field every week. So you're playing against two different opponents every single week. You're playing against your schedule and you're playing against, the virus. And that's absolutely crazy. But at this moment in time, that's what they have to deal with. We also reviewed stuff like, Coach Anthony Lynn was one of the head coaches in the National Football League that tested positive. Him, Sean Payton, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, and head coach Doug Peterson of the Philadelphia Eagles, all tested positive. And sure, that kind of gives your team and your organization an extra depth. I mean, from the guy that you look up to, the leader of your team, is talking to you guys and saying that, hey, I've dealt with this. You don't want this. We need to make sure that we do this, and this to make sure that everything goes according to plan. There's just an extra level of preparation, extra level of commitment, hopefully, from these organizations. But from what we saw, it doesn't just take the team and the coaches to win the Super Bowl. It takes everybody in this organization. There's so many people participating and working towards that prime directive goal of winning a championship. And it starts from, whether it's people that, were cleaning the weight room or setting up the cafeteria. It doesn't matter. There's so many people in these facilities and organizations that are putting forth an effort to, toward that one goal. It's extremely respectful, and it's exciting to see. I mean, as much as it's crazy, that's what the reality is at this time. But either way, let's move on. Let's talk about some players. A couple of the players that popped off screen. First and foremost was Jalen Ramsey, in my opinion. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey was the big name that the Los Angeles Rams brought in the middle of last season. Sure, Jalen Ramsey wanted out of the Jaguars organization, but he also wanted to get paid in the process. He had a couple tidbit arguments with, it wasn't really an argument. It was more of a, hey, I answered a question. Why don't you go ahead and just leave it at that? The press room was kind of giving him a little bit of trouble, asking him, does he want to get paid before the season starts? He gave him a generic answer, which in my opinion was the most respectful answer you could give. I'm going to let my agent and I'm going to let the front office deal with it. I'm not worried about it. And still they kept bugging him. But either way, Jalen Ramsey's going to get paid. I'm hoping he gets paid. As a Los Angeles Rams fan, having Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, two of the best defensive players in the National Football League on defense, it makes a big difference. But again, you have to build out the rest of your defense. That's always been a problem with the Rams. They got a bunch of stud players, but everybody else, the in-betweeners, aren't at the level to make this defense an elite defense that you want it to be. Outside of that, another player that got paid this offseason, Joey Bosa, talking about his $135 million 5-year contract. I mean, Joey Bosa is a great defensive lineman. He's one of the best defensive ends in the league. But, I mean, just looking at what his brother did for the 49ers last season, Nick Bosa, the contracts are getting big. And to be honest, when Nick Bosa's contract's probably available, he's going to dominate his brother's contract and make a lot of money. But either way, locking down a big defensive end, somebody that can really put pressure on opposing offenses and quarterbacks, that's something that you want to do. Again, in terms of the GM mindset, a lot of GMs say we want to pay our quarterbacks first, then we want to pay the guys that chase the quarterback. And that's why defensive ends get so much respect in this league, and why they get paid as much as they do. Outside of that, the thumbnail himself, Justin Herbert, the number 6 overall pick of the 2020 NFL draft, was really, in my opinion, the biggest highlight, because the question of who's going to be the starting quarterback of the Los Angeles Chargers, that's going to be a huge storyline throughout this entire season. And yes, Tyrod Taylor is the guy with experience and he has started in the past, but the last time he started 4 games, and then here came Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick, and took over the Browns franchise and has ran away with it ever since. He brought them their first win. After going 0-16 in 2018, they finally got a W with Baker Mayfield. Was it a Monday night game with the Jets? Regardless, I feel like Justin Herbert's going to be in that similar situation. Hopefully, he can win this job in training camp. But if it takes a couple weeks, perhaps a month for him to finally get the job, it does not matter to me. In terms of the success of this team, you let him wait as much as he possibly can, because you don't want to send him out there and force some damaged goods because he's getting cracked early, because their early competition's pretty tough. But regardless, I think he's ready. And hopefully, throughout the entirety of this season, we're going to get a glimpse of what Justin Herbert is about and how the competition is going to break down between him and Tyrod Taylor. Outside of that, the only other highlights from this episode were just, some conversations here and there with some, players, coaches. But really, the whole point is just getting back into the football field. And I really do feel like Hard Knocks has done that. So now that we've kind of reviewed it and we've talked about, what they've gone over, again, it was a very, quarantine heavy episode, because again, that's what they've been recording for the last couple of weeks. But hopefully the upcoming episodes will have a little bit more, football related stuff. But a couple of the football related stuff that I wanted to go over. Let's talk about these two organizations going into the 2020 season, because again, they have a lot of hype. And I think, for me personally, I would say, and I think that their off-season transactions, have definitely been something that we need to talk about. I mean, as a Chargers fan, as a Rams fan, the Chargers, in my opinion, probably made the most off-season deals that they have in a very long time. And it really is going to make a difference. I mean, they've really locked down some key players. So let's talk about that. I mean, again, they lost Phillip Rivers, their franchise quarterback for God knows how long. He's been there forever. Melvin Gordon also gone. Russell Okung, who was their left tackle, gone. Derek Watt, gone. You lose, Thomas Davis on defense, but the defense wasn't a big deal. You're losing huge names on this offense who have really been Chargers their entire career. Obviously, Russell Okung moved around, but, Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon, these have been diehard Chargers for quite some time now. But even in losing those players, I really do feel like the Los Angeles Chargers have really re-equipped this offseason and built a very structurally well team. In terms of offense, I couldn't be more excited for the acquisition of Brian Bulaga. Brian Bulaga, the right tackle of the Green Bay Packers formerly, is one of the best offensive tackles in the league. I think he's according to Pro Football Focus, like the 5th best right tackle in the National Football League. They move him over to the left side. He's fantastic in the run blocking game. He's obviously going to keep the blind side of whatever quarterback is sitting there. On top of it, in terms of offensive line, they get back Mike Pouncey, who was on the IR last season, only played 5 games. Another one of these great offensive linemen and a good center that's going to solidify the interior of your offensive line. Another way that they solidify the interior, they traded for Trai Turner. Again, they got rid of Russell Okung. They traded him to the Panthers for Trai Turner, guy that's been playing right guard for them for a couple years now. One of the more talented, younger offensive linemen in the league. Again, I think he's only been in the league for about 4 or 5 years. But either way, a talented guy. You reassure your offensive line. That's perfect. So whoever's at quarterback, regardless of who wins that job, they're going to be safe in comparison to years prior. I mean, Phillip Rivers was running for his life last season. A lot of the interceptions he threw, sure, were on him, but a lot of them were because of the pressure coming at him and the fear of getting hit or, getting sacked in pretty much 3 and outing. But regardless, on top of it, they re-equipped the offense in the draft. They went ahead and they drafted Joshua Kelly, running back out of the UCLA. They went and got Joe Reed, wide receiver out of Virginia. They're re-equipping this offense. They're getting ready for the future. Justin Herbert is that future, and I'm hoping that they can go ahead and just give him the job week 1 maybe, and just let's see the Herbert future that we're all hoping we're going to potentially see. But outside of that, in terms of defense, they made some pretty big moves too. I think in terms of defense, they might even be more equipped defensively than they were last season. They were pretty good last season. Sure, Derwin James coming back from IR, another one of these prime players. Their safety, their leader back there. He only played 5 games last season. He's coming back. Then you go ahead and you already have some of the best cornerbacks in the league, and you add Chris Harris Jr. I understand. Chris Harris Jr. is getting older. But the fact that you don't have to play him twice a year, and the fact that he's now on your team locking down opposing wide receivers, fantastic. I love it. But I think my most exciting acquisition for this team this offseason, Linval Joseph. Linval Joseph is one of the best interior one-tech nose tackles in the National Football League. Long ass arms. I mean, really, at the point of attack, offensive linemen sometimes won't be able to even grab him. He's a cinder block. He does not move the line of scrimmage, and he definitely will hold down this defensive line in terms of run stopping, which they've struggled in the past. So love to see that. They also drafted Kenneth Murray in the first round. They traded back into the first round. They grabbed their linebacker out of Oklahoma, the guy that's going to be the centerpiece of this defense, which they've been looking for quite some time now. Defensively, this is one of the better teams in the National Football League. The offense is all going to be based on who's playing quarterback. And if we can get Herbert back in there, a guy that I'm really confident in terms of being able to pass the ball, because I've seen Tyrod Taylor under pressure fall apart at times. And there's a reason why he's never been a starter in this league. Sure, he has more experience with the offense because he knows it, but eventually Herbert's talent is definitely going to shine through, and I can't wait for that to happen. All right, moving on. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the Rams roster and what they've done this offseason. They lost a couple pieces too. Let's not lie here. Besides Eric Weddle, the veteran safety, retiring, they lost a lot of defensive pieces, whether it's Clay Matthews, he hasn't even been signed anywhere else, Corey Littleton, one of the best coverage linebackers in the National Football League. Sure, he wasn't great at run stopping, but he's going off to the Raiders. They still lost Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, Nicole Roby Coleman, their nickel corner, gone. Todd Gurley, they went ahead and waived him, released him. He's over at the Atlanta Falcons. And then they traded Brandon Cooks for a pick, pretty much just clearing up cap space. That's what they did. They cleared up cap space by letting go of a lot of these players and letting them walk or trading them away, because they need to go ahead and they need to pay guys like Jalen Ramsey. And that's what they're going to do this offseason. They also went ahead. They got Leonard Floyd from the Bears, one of these guys that could play outside linebacker, defensive end, filling in for, I think they lost the other Jaguars defensive end, Dante Fowler. He's gone, so they had to fill in his role. They went and got A'Shawn Robinson, formerly of the Detroit Lions. This was an Alabama interior defensive lineman, 3 tech, 1 tech, doesn't really matter, kind of move it around there, who honestly coming out of, the 2016, 2017 draft was one of the better defensive linemen. He was on the IR last season, or in 2018. I think he missed the 2019 season. And they went ahead and signed him. So you're going ahead and you're bolstering up your defensive line once again. I mean, you still have Aaron Donald, arguably the best player in the entire National Football League. You still have Michael Brockers, and then you have Leonard Floyd at an end position / outside linebacker. You have A'Shawn Robinson. You've aligned with your defensive line being as strong as possible. Linebackers, where they're going to struggle. Again, they did not really go ahead and make any moves in terms of grabbing a linebacker, which is always going to hurt. But the secondary is going to gain more experience, hopefully with John Johnson back there, Jalen Ramsey, the sophomore safety, was it Tyler something? Taylor something. It starts with a K, I swear, or Knapp, something like that. I'm going to lose my mind the fact that I don't remember that. But regardless, gosh, my brain just doesn't want to function right now. Regardless, in terms of a couple of things that I saw in this episode that was really exciting for me, when the Rams were doing a walkthrough, and in terms of, I don't know if you've ever been, for those of you who have just clicked on this video, in terms of just listening to me talk about the Hard Knocks experience, I'm a fantasy football kind of guy. And the fact that I saw Cam Akers running with the number ones during walkthroughs and being the pass blocking running back is probably the most exciting thing. Because yes, in this 2020 NFL draft, they went ahead and they drafted Cam Akers from FSU. They went and got Van Jefferson in the second round as a wide receiver that's going to fill in for Cooks, probably take Josh Reynolds' job in the near future. But the exciting part was the fact that Cam Akers was running with the first team. And that's what I'm expecting to see. And that's hopefully what we're going to see in fantasy football. But regardless, that's pretty much it. These two teams, they've got an exciting future ahead of them. And hopefully the upcoming episodes are going to see, some competition go down. Sure, we've already seen players get cut by the end of this episode. We saw that tight end lose his mind, be, in my opinion, a little bit disrespectful. I mean, again, this team gave you the opportunity. Sure, it's a numbers game and you didn't make the team, but, being a little disrespectful here and there, even though the coach was like, I like this fire. It depends. I guess it's just, all your perspective and your subjective opinion on that kind of a reaction. But regardless, that is my episode 1 review of Hard Knocks training camp with the Chargers and Rams of Los Angeles. Thank you everybody for watching. If you want to go ahead, check out my other videos. I typically do fantasy football related stuff. Otherwise, we're going to be reviewing Hard Knocks every episode of this season. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Like today's video if you liked it. And outside of that, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.